Winter, 1959. 9 experienced hikers entered the frozen Ural Mountains, never knowing they were walking into history's greatest mystery. They were skilled, prepared, and confident. These were not careless travelers, but experienced winter explorers. Their destination lay deep within one of the most remote mountain ranges in the Soviet Union. None of them realized this journey would become one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. Days later, search teams reached their campsite and discovered something deeply disturbing. Inside the tent, food, cameras, backpacks, and winter gear remained exactly where they had been left. Everything needed for survival had been abandoned without explanation. The tent itself revealed another mystery. Its canvas had been cut from the inside. Footprints led away from the campsite, descending silently toward the dark forest below. Then, the trail simply disappeared beneath fresh snowfall. What investigators discovered next only deepened the mystery. The official investigation reached an extraordinary conclusion, but offered no clear answers. More than 6 decades later, the Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Tonight, we reopen Case File 004. On the night of February 1st, 1959, the 9 hikers settled inside their tent on the icy slopes of Kholets. After a long day of climbing through deep snow and powerful winds, they prepared to spend another freezing night in the Ural Mountains. Outside, the temperature continued to fall as darkness covered the silent landscape. Inside the tent, the group tried to rest. Their boots and heavy outer clothing were placed nearby, ready for the next morning. A single lantern cast a warm glow across the cramped shelter, while fierce winds battered the canvas from outside. It seemed like just another difficult night of a winter expedition. Then, something changed. Exactly what happened has never been established. At some point during the night, the hikers made the extraordinary decision to leave their tent. Instead of using the entrance, investigators later found evidence that the tent had been cut open from the inside. The group stepped out into the blizzard wearing only partial winter clothing. Some had no boots at all. Whatever caused them to leave, they did not return. The tent remained behind, still containing food, equipment, and many of their essential supplies. Footprints later discovered in the snow revealed that the group walked downhill together. The tracks showed no signs of panic or running. In the darkness, they made their way toward the shelter of the forest nearly a kilometer away. Beneath a towering cedar tree, they attempted to survive. They gathered branches and managed to light a small fire, hoping to fight the relentless cold. One member climbed high into the tree, perhaps searching for the distant tent or looking for any sign of safety. Broken branches found later suggested just how desperate those efforts had become. Meanwhile, others appear to have tried different strategies. 3 hikers eventually started back toward the tent, battling deep snow and freezing winds. Farther into the forest, another group worked together to create a shelter in a snow-covered ravine. As conditions grew even harsher, those still alive used extra clothing from companions who could no longer continue, an act of survival in one of the coldest environments on Earth. By morning, fresh snow and powerful winds had begun erasing nearly every trace of that terrible night. What forced 9 experienced hikers to abandon the safety of their tent remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Weeks passed with no word from the expedition. The hikers were expected to return on time, but as the days turned into weeks, concern began to spread. Families, friends, and fellow students waited anxiously for news. By late February 1959, it was clear that something had gone terribly wrong. Soviet authorities organized a large search operation. Rescue teams, volunteers, experienced skiers, and later military personnel began combing the remote slopes of the northern Ural Mountains. Battling freezing temperatures, powerful winds, and deep snow, they followed the expedition's planned route, hoping to find the missing group alive. On February 26th, searchers made a chilling discovery. High on the slope of Kholat Shakhl stood the expedition's tent, partially buried beneath drifting snow. From a distance, it looked almost untouched. But as investigators moved closer, they realized the scene was anything but ordinary. The tent had been damaged, with evidence that it had been cut from the inside. Inside were backpacks, cameras, food supplies, diaries, heavy winter clothing, and most of the hikers' boots. Everything needed for survival had been left behind, suggesting the group had left in extreme haste. Outside the tent, investigators found the first crucial clue. A line of footprints led away from the campsite, heading downhill toward a forest nearly a kilometer away. Some prints appeared to have been made by people wearing socks, while others seemed to be barefoot or wearing only a single shoe. Even more surprising, the tracks suggested the hikers had walked together rather than running in panic. The trail ended near a massive cedar tree at the edge of the forest. Beneath the tree, searchers found the remains of a small fire. Broken branches high above the ground suggested that someone had climbed into the tree, possibly to look back toward the distant tent or search for signs of the others. Every discovery raised new questions, but offered few clear answers. Following the route between the cedar tree and the tent, investigators uncovered additional evidence, revealing that some members of the group had attempted to make their way back up the mountain despite the brutal weather. As winter slowly gave way to spring, melting snow exposed a deep ravine hidden beneath layers of ice and compacted snow. Rescue workers carefully searched the area, knowing that the thaw might finally reveal what the mountain had concealed for months. By the end of the search, all 9 hikers had been found. But instead of solving the mystery, every new discovery only deepened it. The evidence told part of the story, but what truly happened on that frozen mountain remained unknown. High in the northern Ural Mountains, a violent winter storm swept across the frozen landscape. Beneath the darkness and blowing snow, a silent threat may already have been taking shape, hidden from everyone below. As daylight faded, the hikers established camp on an exposed mountainside. It was not the safest location, but experienced expeditions often accepted difficult terrain to stay on schedule. To prepare their campsite, the group carefully cut into the snow and created a level platform. It was a standard winter survival technique, familiar to skilled hikers of the era. Unknown to the expedition, layers of snow continued building above the campsite. Wind-driven accumulation may have slowly increased pressure across the slope throughout the evening. Modern avalanche experts believe weak layers can develop deep inside a snowpack. Everything may appear stable on the surface until a sudden shift triggers collapse without warning. Inside the tent, the hikers settled in after a demanding day of travel. The mountain seemed quiet, but conditions outside continued changing with every passing hour. Powerful katabatic winds may have rushed downhill during the night, carrying additional snow onto the slope and increasing stress on already unstable layers above the camp. Then, sometime after darkness fell, something changed. A section of snow may have shifted, cracked, or collapsed, creating a sudden threat that demanded immediate action. Whatever the hikers experienced inside the tent, it created immediate fear. The danger felt serious enough to force rapid decisions in only a matter of seconds. Rather than using the normal entrance, the group cut through the tent wall. In an emergency, every second mattered, and hesitation could mean disaster. Leaving essential gear behind, the hikers moved downhill into darkness. Their actions suggest they believed remaining near the tent was even more dangerous. The abandoned tent remained alone on the slope. Food, clothing, and equipment were still inside, waiting silently beneath the growing snow. Reaching the forest offered protection from the relentless wind. Among the trees, survival suddenly seemed more possible than on the exposed mountain. Near a large cedar tree, members of the group built a small fire. In temperatures far below freezing, warmth became their most urgent priority. Broken branches high above the ground suggest someone climbed the tree. Perhaps they were searching for the tent through the darkness and snow. As conditions worsened, the group appears to have separated into survival roles. Some remained near the fire, while others attempted to recover essential equipment. For decades, investigators, historians, and researchers have attempted to reconstruct what happened during those final hours on the mountain. One theory points toward military activity. Reports of strange lights in the sky helped fuel speculation about secret Soviet weapons testing. Witnesses in the region described glowing orange objects moving across the night sky. These reports would later become central to many theories. Supporters of the military theory argue that an unexpected test could have frightened the hikers and forced them from their shelter. However, despite decades of discussion, no direct evidence has ever conclusively linked military operations to the deaths of the hikers. Some researchers suggest these vibrations could create anxiety, fear, confusion, or even panic in people exposed for extended periods. If such conditions developed that night, they may have influenced decision-making inside the tent. Yet, proving this remains extremely difficult. Other theories proposed an attack by outsiders, but investigators found little evidence supporting the presence of unknown individuals near the campsite. Footprints discovered near the tent were largely associated with the hikers themselves, weakening arguments that outsiders caused the tragedy. Animal attacks have also been suggested. While animals may explain some later damage, they cannot explain the group's sudden evacuation. As years passed, more unusual explanations emerged. Stories involving secret experiments, unknown creatures, and unexplained phenomena spread worldwide. The supernatural theories remain popular because the case feels impossible. Yet popularity alone is not evidence of what truly happened. Most modern researchers continue to favor natural explanations involving weather, snow conditions, terrain, survival decisions, and human limitations. The hikers leveled the snow and pitched their tent on the exposed mountain slope, unaware that one simple decision would soon change everything forever. As darkness fell, the wind grew stronger. The mountain became colder, quieter, and far more dangerous than anyone expected. Sometime during the night, something triggered immediate fear inside the tent. They had no time to waste. Without stopping to collect their boots or heavy winter clothing, the hikers cut through the side of the tent and rushed into the freezing darkness, believing every second could mean survival. Moving together in a controlled line, the group left the exposed mountainside behind and headed toward the forest, hoping the trees would shield them from the deadly wind. Reaching a large cedar tree, the exhausted hikers searched for shelter, gathered broken branches for firewood, and desperately tried to protect themselves from the brutal cold. A small fire finally came to life beneath the cedar tree, but the freezing temperature continued to drain their strength with every passing minute of the night. Realizing they could not survive without their equipment, Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin turned back, determined to reach the abandoned tent despite the freezing storm. Meanwhile, the remaining 4 hikers moved into a nearby ravine, hoping to build a snow shelter where they might survive until daylight finally arrived. The shelter offered little protection. Exhaustion, severe injuries, and the relentless freezing temperatures slowly overwhelmed the last survivors before morning could ever come. Even today, one important question still remains. Why did the hikers cut open their tent instead of simply using the normal entrance to escape? Another mystery is the timeline itself. Who made the first decision? Who tried to lead the group? And how long did they survive afterward? Perhaps some answers will never be known. The mountain kept its silence, leaving behind a tragedy that continues to challenge investigators even after decades. Before becoming one of history's greatest mysteries, they were simply 9 determined young hikers chasing adventure, friendship, and the challenge of the frozen Ural Mountains together. They were experienced, prepared, and confident. Nothing in their photographs suggests they believed this expedition would become their final journey into the wilderness. Today, the abandoned tent remains one of the strongest symbols of this case, reminding us that one unexplained night changed everything forever. The equipment they left behind tells a silent story of urgency, fear, and impossible decisions made under the harshest conditions imaginable. Modern research points toward natural forces rather than impossible legends, yet some questions continue to resist simple answers even after many decades. The strongest explanation combines unstable snow, extreme weather, desperate survival choices, and tragic circumstances instead of secret conspiracies or supernatural events. Even if the mystery is never completely solved, the evidence reminds us that nature alone can become an overwhelming and unforgiving force. The Dyatlov Pass incident is remembered not because every answer is known, but because every unanswered question still feels deeply human today. More than 60 years have passed, yet the silent mountain continues to guard its secrets beneath layers of snow, wind, and time. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not how they died, but what they faced together during their final hours. Their story deserves remembrance, respect, and understanding.